So this is the Kondor Blue Cage for the GFX 100II. This is my personal GFX 100II. This is my personal Kondor Blue Cage. I bought and paid for this. I really was excited to upgrade to this camera from the 100S because of its video functionality. The 100S was solid, but this is on a whole other level, and I needed to outfit it with something that was going to be awesome for video, and this does not disappoint. This is the greatest camera cage I have ever used. The problem is that it's also the worst camera cage I've ever used, and I'll tell you why. For starters, this is a new design from Kondor Blue. They have this hinge where this opens up on the bottom and you can take the camera out. It's a new design that they're touting as being more versatile, reliable, sturdy, and they're 100% right. This thing is built, this thing is a tank. I should say that if you're gonna get this cage, you better plan to have this cage live on your camera. The problem with the 100II is it's a photo camera first and a video camera second. The video's getting really good with it, but if you want to use this as a photo camera with the cage on, it's kind of not really meant for it. It's really meant specifically for video. It's got this Pro Blade handle, which is just a revelation, being able to record to these SSD cards right here. These are incredible. I absolutely love it. I go from getting, about 15 minutes of ProRes HQ and 8K on my 325 gigabyte Delkin CF Express card to getting about, at the absolute highest resolution, about an hour and 45 minutes onto this, which for ProRes HQ 8K, that's a lot of recording time. That's a ton. This is a 2 terabyte drive. If I'm shooting basic 4K, this gets 12 hours. Absolutely insane. Also, it's just a revelation. The video quality is incredible. But the cage has issues. It has serious issues, very serious issues. And I don't know that it's necessarily a problem with Kondor Blue. I think it's an issue with the camera that they applied this design to. So they have this cage design. They also make it for the XH2S, which is a much smaller camera. And I think they're applying it to a bunch of new cameras like the Panasonic S5 II and things like that. Not nearly as tall as this, and that's the issue. It's the height. The height is the issue. That's something we need to consider here. So what's the problem? Well, for starters, you look at this, you might think, oh, that's a slick looking setup. Look at that. You got the top handle, you got the side wing grip. Everything looks good. Got the plug-in right there. It's great. But here's the thing, this is meant for video, right? So what's something that you almost will always use for video if you're kitting it out for like a proper video shoot? Monitor, right? Maybe an Atomos, maybe just a regular monitor. Since we got this for recording high-end video, we don't need the recording of the Atomos. Maybe we're using a different Feel World, OC, whatever you say there. So what's the problem? Well, this is the problem. It's blocking the HDMI port. The cable's blocking the HDMI port in order for me to use the SSD drive. So if I want to use this with a monitor, you can't. You have to either pick the SSD drive or the monitor. And you might be thinking, oh, well, Logan, you're not looking at the promo images right. You got the cable backwards. Like, oh, okay. Let me take this out. Take the straight end. Go to the right angle, which here, let me try and get this out. It's kind of tough with this wing grip in the way, which I'll get into there again. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go right there. And now let's go ahead and move this guy around. It's like, oh wait, this cable doesn't quite reach with the wing grip right there. And then why don't we go around? And we're like, all right, well that does reach. So now we're plugged in, right? Well, now I'm gripping, it's on the grip, like it's covering the wing grip. And if I push it, I'm already seeing it. It's already fell out. Like pushing this, it's already falling out. And I don't know if you've ever damaged a USB port on a camera. It's not a cheap fix. I found that out working in a camera store, sending out a repair for somebody who did it on his Canon R5. He's like, do you know how much it's going to cost? Like, I don't know. We're sending out to an authorized repair facility. I mean, it's a USB-C port. They're on everything. How expensive could it be? Well, this USB-C port is attached to the circuitry board and the assembly that's within this camera. So in order to replace that, they have to replace the whole thing. It cost them $900 to fix that USB port because they had to replace the entire assembly, which also included the mic port, the HDMI port, all that stuff. It's not a cheap fix. And without that, it's just begging to be bent and damaged. And now you might be thinking, well, why don't you use the included cable guard? Well, I would like to, except when you have the cable guard, the handle blocks it. So then like, all right, well, maybe you just have to adjust the handle. It's like, all right, cool. So maybe I'll just move it this way. And now we got it out of the way. Now we can come down here. And it's like, okay, now we've got it kind of in the way. I'm still hitting it. And the problem is, this doesn't feel good. This isn't the way it's meant to be held. I'm holding it like crooked. It's just not the way it's meant to be. So now you might be thinking, well, why don't you get the longer cable? This is the longer cable. This is the 12.5-inch cable. It comes with an 8-inch cable. And I knew that wasn't going to be enough. So I was like, well, let me get the long one. And it just doesn't work right. Like that configuration I had at the top, that works for me gripping it and everything like that. And if I'm just doing run and gun, that actually works. That's good. But if I'm doing like a long shoot, if I'm doing like a short film, if I'm doing something that requires a monitor, if I'm doing anything that requires run and gun style stuff, it's really kind of inconvenient. The thing is, they do make an 18-inch cable. The problem is they're both right angled. There's not a straight one and a right angled one. And now you might be thinking, well, what does that matter? It's longer, just plug it in the way you want it to be. And also, since it's right angle, you can plug it in this way instead, right? You can plug it in down here. Well, here's the problem. It doesn't plug in because it hits the bottom of the cage. So let's take their included hex key out, which we'll get into that later again. And it still does not fit. You cannot go right angle downward onto this camera with this cage. The cage gets in the way. It doesn't work that way. And even if it did, if I wanted to set this down, the right angle is going down, it's going to sit on the cable. It doesn't work that way. So it needs like a right angle to straight cable so that I can go in straight and then go around this handle and then up there. So this particular camera specifically has this issue. I don't think the other cameras have this issue because it doesn't have the height that this has. But it also comes down to the design of this handle. Like this handle feels great, don't get me wrong. I can adjust this back and forth, feels awesome. But in order for me to get this to work right, this needs to be all the way back because if it's any forward, I'm losing slack and I'm putting damage on the ports potentially. But look at how high this is compared to where it attaches. It attaches right here. The cable mount, that's a good like 2 inches above, maybe even more, above where it's actually mounted to. So there's like a whole platform here. And on their promotional materials, they say like, oh, you can actually take this off and attach it to the side and turn this into a side handle. Well, here's the problem with that. Let me go ahead and do that. So I take this off. And I take this off. So now let's, I mean, it's not going to look right because I would have to, in order to run this as a side handle, I have to unbolt this. So I have to unbolt that and then rotate it so that I can go in the right proper way. But even when you get it in the right way, one, there's no safety pin in case anything goes wrong. When you rotate it, this thing is so big, in order for it to sit properly, if you want to set it down, it's going to be like oblong because this is just down so low. So it doesn't sit right. And then on top of that, in order to get a nice grip, it's got to be like if you can just see it, this is a nice grip, but how's that going to rest? It's just going to be like this. You can't set it down properly. So in order to do that, it's up here. And when you get that, this cable, if you want to plug it in, it's going to have the same issues where it's going to like be, it's going to hit obstructions. It just doesn't work. And I feel like it's really, you know what it needs? It needs like just a 14-inch cable Or make that 18-inch cable that they have not be dual right angle. Make one straight angle, one right angle. And that kind of solves the issue with this particular camera. But I haven't even scratched the surface on the other design flaws of this cage. So let's go back to this orientation, this setup. We got this here. So how does this cage go on and off? Well, there's a bunch of hex keys you need to do this. Like most cages, you just bolt it into the bottom, and there might be one extra one that goes in through an eyelet to lock it into place, and that's usually enough. There's some cages out there that have like quick releases, but those are a little bit more expensive. This one, like here's the thing, when it's in there, this is the most rock solid, best handling, best feeling cage I've ever used. And let's be honest, it looks beautiful. Like you show up on set, this is a wow factor cage, and I love that. And I hate that I have to love that because client optics are important. They see shiny objects and they are in awe, as much as we are as people who have gas. But the problem with this is, if you need to take this out, if you need to switch over to photo mode and you don't want the cage on there, it is a process. It is not a quick process. It is not as simple as taking this hex key right here, which is a little tough to get out. This is one they supply you with. Let's go ahead and take this thing apart. So we'll take this guy off right there. That is the bottom tripod screw to go into the bottom of the camera to lock it into the plate. And now you might be thinking, all right, well, let's get this off. And, you know, if I have tightened this handle down with the hex key to make sure this is locked really nicely, which I often do, so there's no like wiggle, there's no play, you'll take the included hex key usually and stick it in there to undo that, because oftentimes, you know, finger tightening, when you locked it down with a hex key, it's too tight. You have to use the hex key to unlock it. This hex key that they give you does not fit this bolt. So with other brands like Small Rig and Tilted, they have handles, they have the included hex key that goes into the handle for storage. This does not have that. Did they give you a hex key? Yes, they did. But they also gave you another hex key for these bolts here. And these two hex keys are smaller than this hex key, which is smaller than this hex key. There are 3 hex key sizes you need to properly get things really secure and also get things undone. You could use a smaller hex key for this, absolutely, to loosen this up, which you often might do. The fact of the matter is, I've actually lost the hex keys. They're not like special ones, they're not like Kondor Blue branded, they're just generic hex keys. I've got a million of them. It's not a huge deal. It's just annoying that in order for me to get this cage out, I need to bring multiple hex keys, not all of which can attach to the cage for safekeeping like the other one. But the thing is, the one that undoes the bottom of the camera, all it does, it doesn't get you out of the cage. It just gets the camera out of this bottom part. So in order to do that, I got this, you know, multi-tool, which I'm sure a lot of people have. So I've got to go ahead and this is how you undo it. So here we go. We're gonna, oh, I chose the wrong one. A little too small. Let's go into here. So we've got to undo this bolt here first. Just real time. I'm going as fast as I can. One out. Then we got to do these 2 bolts down here. These are also not small bolts. They're quite long, so it's going to take a little bit longer to get these out. One down. There's 2 of them, so we got to do this twice. Far enough I can do finger tightening. Nope, not loose enough to do finger loosening. How about now? Nope, it's not, because this is the one that is keeping this thing linked together, so it's going to be a lot of tension on this. It's going to want to pop out pretty quickly, if I'm not mistaken. And there we go. And now we can unhinge this, and then we take this off, which these lock into the eyelets for the strap. We have to really kind of undo this because it locks in there. The first time I put this on, it didn't fit. I had to force it in there, and I felt like I was going to damage my camera. There, it's off. That only took, what, 2 to 3 minutes, like, just to get the cage off the camera. And it goes into these eyelets, which is, that's the thing. Like I said, when it's locked in there, it's not going anywhere. That thing is solid. So if you're planning on using this as like a permanent video camera setup, amazing. I am only going to use it when I know I am only using it for video. If I know I'm not going to need photo or anything like that, I'm not even going to hesitate to put it in the cage because it's great. Don't get me wrong. It's just the way it's designed. It was designed to be secure and everything, and that's awesome. But how many, like, so many moving pieces, different size bolts, weird measurements and things like that. The cables don't line up. It's just one thing after another. And like, I can't, you know, the orientation I had when I started this video, that was the only usable orientation I've been able to put it in. And even then, it's still a little bit limiting. I'll tell you another thing I don't really like about it. This wing grip is designed to go right here on this area rosette. And I was like, you know, sometimes I might want a second grip. You know, I like having 2 points of contact off the camera if I'm doing handheld running gun work, you know, because having 2 points off a camera leads to steadier footage. So what if I wanted to get another one of these and reverse it? Because obviously it lets you. You can take this off and reverse it, put it on this side. So now you have, you know, a left-handed wing grip. Well, where's the, or excuse me, a right-handed wing grip? Where's the right-handed rosette? It's not there. You know, you could take this off and go, and that's the other thing. This top screw here, that's a 3/8 thread. This is a 1/4 20. You'd have to grip it into here, even if you wanted to just go in here. Look at, like, what, why? I just don't know that this was super well thought out in terms of the ecos. Like, this is well thought out for the exact design that they intended. It is not modular, so you have to be really committed to that setup. And that's fine. Like I said, when I set this up, I'm gonna be happy with it, but it is such a chore to make this thing sing. And I just can't believe the hoops you have to jump through just to get this thing on and off. But not only that, connecting this handle, which is not cheap. This is an expensive handle. It's expensive media, but I need it for this camera because it records such high quality. I don't want to record to like small media, and this is way more reliable. And it's also something I can take in and out, connect it to my camera. I can edit off of it. This thing is incredible. That's a whole other video. The SanDisk ProBlade system is incredible. But you know, this camera, because of the way the ports are designed, the USB-C is right there on the bottom. So if you do the right angle up, you're blocking the HDMI port if you want to have a monitor. So you have to commit to either a monitor or the SSD handle, which, you know, isn't the end of the world, but it's not efficient if your whole goal is to make this like a cinema rig. You want to use both. So that stinks. But not only that, that's the microphone port right there. And when this cable goes up, this braided cable is stiff, man. This thing, like, it's malleable, but when you move it, you potentially bend the ports. You potentially damage the ports. That could lead to hundreds of dollars in repairs, maybe over $1,000 in repair. That's not fun. And it blocks the mic port. So if you're using a monitor and a microphone, guess what? You have to pick either the SSD, the monitor, or the monitor and the mic. The monitor and the mic will probably work fine, but if the SSD is attached this way, it's just not going to work. You need the straight angle in order to go in there if you want to use all three. And in order to use all three, this needs to be 2 to 3 inches longer. And they make one, but they're both dual right angle. They're not right angle and straight angle. And that's the other thing. It comes with the provided cable clamp for protection. That cable clamp has like a bar that separates the HDMI and the microphone port. So it's there but it's designed for a straight angle USB-C. If you use a right angle USB-C, it doesn't fit. So you have to use a straight angle for this, but with this one, when you use the straight angle and you have it connected, it gets in the way of the grip. You can't grip it properly without grabbing the cable and potentially bending your ports. So, you know, I will give them 100% credit on the build quality of this cage. This thing is like, I've used small rig cages, I've used Camvate, have seen Falcam, I've seen all the cages in my life, Tilta. They're all great. They all do exactly what they're designed to do. It's just pieces of machined steel with threads on them. That's really all it is. They're all, you know, I kind of thought they're all the same until I got my hands on this. This thing feels premium. Everything about it screams quality. The look of it, the feel of it. Like I said, when this thing is locked in, I feel so confident holding this camera. Like I just feel like I'm going to get great stuff with it. It just gives me so much confidence when I use the camera in this cage. It is remarkable. Like I said at the top, best camera cage I've ever used. But also, this is a, look at that, I'm recording this, I'm at 21 minutes now, and the last 18 have been about how it's not good. I mean, I feel like it's a simple fix. Give us a longer cable with one straight and one right angle, but that's the problem. It's something that Kondor Blue probably didn't think about because it probably works fine on the XH2S, the Samsung Samsung S5. Oh my God, I thought Galaxy S5. Jesus. The Panasonic S5 II. Those are shorter cameras, so that cable probably works fine. It probably fits just fine on those cameras. But this camera's a lot taller by about, you know, at least an inch taller. And when you have this top handle that adds a lot of height, it's an issue. So it's a simple issue. Just give us a longer cable that's got proper connections. But I also really don't like that I have to have multiple hex keys to get this thing properly suited. I don't like that, you know, this one hex key that it actually has a slot, magnetized slot that's designed to go on the cage. It only does one function, and that's lock the camera into the bottom of the plate, which it's already kind of locked in because of this. So, and once this is like bolted in, like all this thing's done, it's really not in any danger of going anywhere because these little teeth lock into those eyelets. It's really not in any danger of going anywhere. This just adds extra security, and you 100% want it. You don't want to drop your $7,500 camera. But that's the one that they hitched the wagon to, is the one that goes onto the camera to give it a little bit of extra security. But the one that actually takes it apart, it's small, it's tiny, and you're probably going to lose it. So what happens if you lost that hex key? And it's this size hex key. That is a tiny, that's like the third smallest one on this entire wrench set. That's a small hex key. That's an easy thing to lose. What if you need to switch it out and you're like, where's that hex key? Oh no, it's at the bottom of a bag and I can't see anything. Like, you're stuck. You're just stuck. I just wish there were more uniform hex key sizes, and then, you know, this one, if you want to like stick in a hex key to lock that down, if you lost that small one, well, let's use the big one. It doesn't fit, so you're just finger tightening this, and as you know, if you're finger tightening side handles, eventually they'll start coming loose, they'll start jiggling a bit, it'll drive you nuts. You're constantly trying to get it as tight as you can. It's just one of those things where the little things kind of eat you up. That's all I got. Let's get a longer cable. That'll solve my concerns. I'm probably the only person in the world with this concern. This is a very niche camera with a very niche cage. It probably doesn't affect their other camera cages. So I don't know. Maybe Kondor Blue will hear it and maybe they will say, hey, that's a good point. We'll send you a longer cable. Also, the 18-inch cable that they have, that woodwork that has 2 right angles, it only comes in red. I like the blue. The blue's sharp. Anyways, that's what I got.